It's Wednesday night and time for Bible stuff from McHenry Creek, and we're going to have some fun tonight. The more I learn about some of these stories, they become some of my favorites, and tonight, David and Goliath. A lot of things floating around out there over my lifetime about this story. Some of it was absolutely correct, and some of it, I don't know where we heard it. I don't know where it came from. We're going to dig into that tonight. The whole story, and we're going to learn the whereabouts of Goliath's head and his sword. Now let's go back to the questions. I got 7 questions tonight. I gave them to you Sunday night in our promo teaser, but let's take a look at them again. How old was David when he killed Goliath? Number 2, how did David kill Goliath? Number 3, why did David cut off Goliath's head? Number 4, what did David do with Goliath's head? Number 5, what did David do with Goliath's sword? Number 6, why did David not use Saul's armor to face Goliath? And number 7, how tall was Goliath? Those are the questions we're going to answer tonight. Well, here we go. Number 1, how old was David when he killed Goliath? Now, there's a lot of speculation here because it's kind of all we can do. There's not a lot of facts about this, but we can narrow it down. He seemed to be an older teenager. Now, according to the laws of Moses, I think it was Deuteronomy where it spells this out, a man had to be at least 20 years old to be a soldier. So when he killed Goliath, he was not 20. His brothers were 20 or older. They're in the army. David was not. He was less than 20, it seems. I'm going to speculate he was about 17. I'm going to be within a year there, I think, 16 to 18, but let's go with 17. I've always thought that 17 was a good age for slaying giants. So let's just stick with that one. Plus, remember, he kind of had to be an older teen to have the capability of using Goliath's sword. Remember, he's going to cut his head off with it later. So he, 12 or 13 years old, probably couldn't handle a big guy, Goliath's sword like that. So I'm going to go with 17. Question number 2. How did David kill Goliath? Think. Did you know that he stabbed him? I think so. Let's see what the Bible says. Oh, all right. This is 1 Samuel 17:51. Then David had already slingshot, knocked him down. Then David ran and stood over the Philistine. He grasped his sword. He drew it out of its sheath and killed him. Then he cut off his head with it. So, the sequence is this. Slingshot with the rock, hit him in the head, knocked him down. Maybe knocked him out. Then he drew out the sword. It says he killed him. I think you have to stab somebody with a sword to kill him. And then it says, and then he cut off his head. Slingshot, knocked him out, stabbed him, cut off his head. Don't look at me like that. That's what it says. I'm just reading it. All right, question number 3. Why did David cut off Goliath's head? Kind of strange. Some say a trophy. I literally read this. A trophy to hang in the banquet hall when he became king. I realized when he was young, he was anointed by a prophet and all that jazz. But come on. You think he's really thinking about becoming king when he's out there fighting Goliath? Was he thinking about that then? I doubt it. Anyway, why did he cut off Goliath's head? I got no idea. If you figure that out, let me know. Hey, question number 4. What did David do with Goliath's head? We know for sure that he took it to Jerusalem. Let's take a look and see what the Bible says about that. 17:54. After he's killed him and cut off the head, it says, "And then David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem. But he put his weapons in his tent." Now we also know that David did not go back home. Saul kept him with him and the armies and where they were staying at Hebron when they weren't in war. But it says he took the head to Jerusalem. Now when it says he put the armor weapons in his tent, that means he kept them. That's all that can mean, because he didn't go back home. He stayed in the tent or wherever, whatever his dwelling was when he got back to Hebron with Saul and his army. But we know he didn't go back home. The Bible tells us that. But when did he take the head to Jerusalem? He was around 17, and it says he took the head to Jerusalem. We're going to have to do some math. Take a look at 2 Samuel 5, 4 through 5. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. At Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem, he reigned 33 years over all of Israel and Judah. And now, just to back that up, 1 Kings 2:11, the time that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem. Remember the question, what did David do with Goliath's head? We know he took it to Jerusalem. He killed Goliath at about 17, and he arrived at Jerusalem at 37. Remember, he became king at 30. He ruled over Judah at Hebron for 7, and then Jerusalem for 33. So he's 37 when they conquered Jerusalem. It was owned by the Jebusites. Jebus, what they even called it, Jebu or something. But the Jebusites had it the whole time. And now David and his army at 37 years old takes Jerusalem, and he goes to Jerusalem. This was the first time he would have gone there. I can't find any other reference in the Bible that says otherwise. So 17 to 37, that means 20 years he held onto that head. He had Goliath's head for 20 years before he brought it to Jerusalem. That's the best I can find. I can't find any other time he went to Jerusalem. But the biggest question of the night, not even one of our regular questions, but how did he keep that head? The good news, I may know how he kept that head. You see, there's a guy in our community that has a history of this sort of thing, preserving heads. I know that sounds weird, but he's actually going to join me next week, next Wednesday night. I'm going to have an interview with him, and he's going to explain how that process is done of preserving heads. Then we're going to have a pretty good idea of how David preserved Goliath's head all those years. Now remember, next week, special guest, we're going to look at some ways to preserve heads. Don't tell the police. Question 5. What did David do with Goliath's sword? Remember this verse? Then David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his weapons in his tent. Now I can't find in the Bible any reference in Jewish history of how or when he did it, but we know that he took the sword to the tabernacle at Nob. It must have been the biggest tabernacle of all. There was 85 priests working at this tabernacle, and the sword ended up there. Don't know when he did it, but it was there. Because you remember how the story goes. He became famous in the country in battles and stuff, and the people would chant, Saul's killed his thousands and David's killed his tens of thousands, and Saul became pretty jealous about that sort of thing. So Saul is trying to kill David, and David's on the run. Jealousy, I guess. So David, in his hiding and running and all that stuff, he runs and gets to the tabernacle at Nob. You see, remember, David knows where there's a weapon at Nob. He needs a weapon. He knows where one's at. We know David's on the run. He gets to Nob, to the tabernacle, and goes to the priest and says, I need a sword. 1 Samuel 21:9. Then the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is all we have. Okay. That's one. That's all he needs. So now, we know what happened to both the head and the sword. They actually both undertook 3 stages. We know the first 2. Let's review. The head, chopped it off and kept it for a while. Then he took it to Jerusalem. Number 3, where is it now? No idea. The sword, number 1, he took it to the tabernacle. Secondly, he borrowed it to use it as a weapon. Where is it now? Got no idea. I do wonder something though. Does God have a museum? All right, so here we are. Question number 6. David, why did he not use Saul's armor? What does everybody say? Let's all say it together. The armor was too big. How hard was that? There's only one problem. It's not true. The Bible never says that he didn't use Saul's armor because it was too big. No, not never. That may be the first triple negative ever spoken. I think I remember in school you're not supposed to use a double negative, but I think triples are okay. No, not never. Back to the Bible. Now, I'm going to read the first verse because the screen's really not big enough for both of these. So the first verse, this is 1 Samuel 17, if you want to look it up later, 1 Samuel 17, 38, 39. Here's verse 38. Then Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a helmet of bronze on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail. Now here's verse 39. And David girded his sword over his armor, put on the belt that holds the sword, and he tried in vain to go, for he was not used to them. Then David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I am not used to them. And David put them off. Some versions will say, I haven't tried them. He just wasn't used to using armor. And what did he need a sword for anyway? Slingshot, right? That's all he needed. But remember, that's not what this says. No, not never. It was too big. He just wasn't used to using it. I think it's high time that we begin just letting the Bible speak for itself. It says what it says. We've got to stop letting deciders tell us what it means. Somebody's leaving out parts of the story. The Bible is interesting. Read it and let it speak. Remember what Dr. Seuss said, it's fun to have fun. I promise you the Bible's fun. It's interesting. Read it. Find 2 or 3 versions so you find one that fits you and read it. So next Wednesday night, we're going to skip one of these questions to next week. How tall was Goliath? We'll get to that one next week. And remember, we're going to have a special guest. He knows how to preserve heads, and he lives in our community. Lock your doors. So I'll see you next week. This is Terry from McHenry Creek, and if I owe you a nickel, let me know. Thanks.